Welcome to a very special episode of Skelly's Garage. As you may have seen through the past few episodes, the BMWs that usually fill your screens, that is to say FAF, my E39 540i, and the Grey Lady, my manual X5, are both in quite a sorry state. The X5 still needs the engine replaced, but I can't get to that until I've finished working on FAF and sent it off to the body shop. So, in the interim, I've decided that it's time to stop driving my partner's perfectly reliable Toyota Camry, which, you may also remember, I recovered from a tiny bit of major flooding, and look for yet another car to add to the fleet. Through a shocking instance of kismet, the perfect thing came up for sale near me. It was an extremely sensible, mostly reliable, front-wheel drive Mazda hatchback. Of course, I did the perfectly rational thing and bought it sight unseen. I met a tow truck driver in a random parking lot about 50 miles away with plates in hand, ready to drive it home. And honestly, apart from a brief instance of the brakes sticking, which hasn't never happened since, I was in disbelief at how I lucked out. Because yes, the car is indeed an extremely sensible, mostly reliable Mazda hatchback, but it has a secret, a pretty big turbo under the hood. I bought one of my hero cars. I bought a Mazda Speed 3. I wanted to give you a little bit of a history lesson. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, the universe was created and yada yada yada. Mazda started making cars. Of course, if you're familiar with cars, you might think of Mazda's signature cars, the likes of the RX-3, the RX-7, the RX-8, all of which used the Wankel rotary engines. But I think that there's a little bit more to the story. I mean, obviously, in the 80s, when Mazda, along with every other Japanese company, was flush with cash, Mazda reinvented the British Roadster and called it the MX-5 Miata. And it sold pretty well, actually. And the Miata represented kind of a manifestation of Mazda's philosophy on making cars. It was small, it was light, it was uncomplicated, it was almost like Lotus, but with deeper pockets and less of a propensity for electrical fires. In fact, they even did well with their pedestrian cars, which had a little bit of fun injected in their DNA where their competition didn't necessarily have that. The 626, for example, was smaller than the Camry and the Accord. But what it lacked in size, it made up with in driving dynamics. Even with the absence of some of the bells and whistles that the competition had. And for the most part, this is how it carried on. With Mazda nipping at the heels of the Toyotas and the Hondas of the world, until the Japanese bubble burst in the mid-90s. When Mazda almost didn't make it. They're less than half the size of Honda, which by themselves were not very large. So Mazda turned to Ford for help, and the Blue Oval came in, purchasing a controlling stake. So Mazda was now a Ford company. And when it was... Geez, that was bright. And when it was time to finally replace the 323, which by this point was pretty old... by the way, the 323 in the US market, for example, was called the Protégé. Anyway, when it came time to replace that car, Mazda had a little bit more cash on the books from Ford. And so Mazda got to work trying to develop a platform that would compete with the Civics, the Golfs, the Corollas, and the like. And a lot of time, money, and testing later, the new platform was ready, and the first car would be released. That first car, say it with me now, was the Ford Focus. Not a Mazda. But the Ford Focus had a few platform mates. In other words, cars that were sharing the same basic structure, but with different sheet metal interiors and engines. Some of those cars were the Volvo S40, the Volvo C30, and, the Mazda 3. This one, the first generation. I mean, these cars had surprising abilities to handle while they had lower noise vibration harshness, they had comfort in the cabin, and in some of them cases, they were exceptionally handsome. After a few years of sales, Mazda decided that they were going to turn up the heat a little bit. And they let their in-house tuning partner, Mazda Speed, have the car. Now, Mazda Speed already worked on a few models in the past. The Mazda Speed Protégé, the Mazda Speed Miata. Out came the 150 horsepower 2.3 liter engine. And in came a intercooled 2.3 liter turbo with 263 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque, routed through a limited slip differential, and offered only in a 6-speed manual. of course. Now this, the Mazda Speed 3, might have been a flash in the pan. I mean, it really only existed for about 5 years. But oh my goodness, was it a bright flash. Every single comparison against the competition that the Speed 3 was in, against the Civic Si, the GTI, the Cobalt SS, other things of that nature, the Mazda handily won them. This car was an absolute riot to drive. So much power and torque at the front wheels. Everyone who drove it said, you know, there's a lot of torque steer. It wants to rip out the steering wheel from your hands. It does. Very much. But that adds to the fun. That makes it very exciting. And honestly, I love that. And not only that, it also accelerates in the way that I imagine like the old Group B rally cars must have done. You know, when you hit the gas from a standstill, there's nothing, and then it's like a truck rear ends you. And the turbo boost kicks in. This is a car that I've wanted since it first came out. I love the styling. I loved reading about how people loved driving it. And when I finally get a chance to drive it myself in 2015, I was hooked. I nearly bought this car like 5 times, but whether it was a question of I didn't have enough money, or the cars that were in front of me needed too much in terms of maintenance, or they had been previously modified, I didn't buy it. You know, 3 years ago, I bought a Mark 7.5 Volkswagen GTI. I figured, well, it has a lot of power. It's a hatchback. It has been, you know, everyone says that it drives very nice. But I sold it. I sold it after 7 months of owning it. I gave it back to the dealership. Because unless you're driving the GTI at 9/10 or above, it's not fun. It's like driving a hospital. Only when you like really beat it within an inch of its life does it get exciting. This car, this is exciting at any speed. Because there is a fear of death. Not really, but like almost a fear of death. And I love that. And when it wants to be civilized... There is so much more blogging that I did about this car, but I'll spare you for the moment. Now it's time to show you the extensive amounts of work that I had to do to make this car drivable. Now let me set some parameters here. The only things that I'm going to do to this car at this time are the things that are necessary for it to pass the safety inspection. Anything beyond that is out of scope. Why? Because I have 2 broken BMWs here that need my help. The reason, of course, why we're outside, despite the fact that I have a almost 2-car garage here, is because the X5 is blocking it, and while it theoretically runs, I just don't really want to move it. Here's our issue. This is a headlight bulb. The bulb is broken. But when you put a new bulb in, it doesn't light up. Why is that? Well, it's because the wiring harness, which I'm holding in my hand, doesn't appear to be working right. So we're going to find out what's going on. Right, so headlights are on, but we see nothing. Basically nothing. Let's test what the other side says. 12 volts. I hate doing repairs outside. It's so not cool. So we're going to remove the air box because I want to get better access. This is the plug that controls the headlights. I'm guessing there's probably no 12 volts here, but we're just going to check. No. No, there is not. That's disappointing. Oh, that's just broken. Well, the plug's just broken straight off. Alright, let's see if we have anything at the wires. Oh. Actually, we do. Okay. This might not be so bad after all. So it looks like this little connector was just very corroded. I mean, you can see the oxidation on the spade connectors there. I hope it focuses, but anyway, you'll have to take my word for it. Alright, so that mystery has been solved. Now what I need to do is get another connector. We'll take some wire, we'll patch this up, and then we'll have headlights again. In the meantime, since we have the airbox off, There is one more part that I'm just going to replace right now because it needs to be done. It is the mass airflow sensor. Now, just like on a BMW, if you put something other than a genuine or Bosch or sometimes Continental mass airflow sensor on a car, it's going to get upset. The way that this car gets upset is it starts dumping a tremendous amount of fuel. So I actually run immensely rich and then start misfiring. What we're going to do is we're going to take the old mass airflow sensor off, which is made by NTK. Don't know who that is. Now, the manufacturer of most electronic parts on Japanese cars is a company called Denso. They are, I think they used to be owned by Toyota, or maybe Toyota still has an ownership stake in them, but they make parts for all kinds of Japanese cars. They make parts for Mazdas, they make parts for Toyotas, Hondas, anything that's on the Pacific side, Denso's got its hands in it. And they actually make parts for non-Japanese cars as well. Once we put this new Denso mass airflow sensor in, I am 100% certain that this car is going to finally act right. No one's saying that you have to get the genuine Mazda air filter. No one's saying that you have to get genuine Mazda bulbs. Not that Mazda even makes bulbs. They just take like Osram or Philips. But specific sensors. And this is the same case with BMW. It's the same case with Mazda. It's the same case with Honda, Toyota, whoever you like to work with. You need to use either the genuine or the OEM for those sensors. In most BMWs, for important sensors like say the crank or the camshaft sensor, if you don't use an original sensor, it won't work. It just won't. You'll replace it, the car will still run poorly. You'll just start chasing problems where all you had to do in the first place was just put in the correct sensor and you wouldn't have had any further problems. The car was made with this sensor in mind. Therefore, this sensor is what we will use. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the auto parts store, see if I can score one of these connectors, and I'll be back shortly. So, I'm back from the auto parts store. I couldn't find exactly the same connector, but I did find one that seems like it will do the trick. Now, the first generation Mazda 3, which this is, uses an H7 bulb for the headlight. That bulb looks like this. In this car from the factory, there is an adapter, it seems, that turned this H7 bulb into a slightly different connector, and this connector is what plugged into this. Now, since I wasn't able to find that exact same connector at the auto parts store, the one I did find is for an H7 bulb directly. Will it work? Yeah, it should work. Is there any significant difference? Not really, not that I can see. I mean, this is a ceramic unit, so it's not going to rust, and the terminals seem to be solid, and besides, the headlight has this weather protective seal on it, so here's hoping that that will work out well. But I have a set of brand new bulbs, but I don't want to try my fix on a brand new bulb, so I'm just going to use the working bulb from the other side. I'm taking this wiring harness that I bought, and I'm just going to connect these two and then use some shrink tubing to make it sit right and make sure that it is a secure connection, and then we'll be all set. Okay, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. There's a problem. So the core problem is that this needs to be used because otherwise the bulb doesn't stay in the headlight. This obviously is too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect this directly on while I find the appropriate Mazda harness instead of a generic one. Now, this is the type of fix, honestly, that I really hate doing because this is what I call cowboying it. But I can't have 3 cars that I can't drive. This car needs to get inspected today, and this is the only thing that's holding it up. So, I'm going to put this in, we're going to order the wiring, or maybe just another one of these guys, and we'll get it sorted, and it's going to be great. Until then, we'll have to live like animals. Definitely not proud of what we're doing here. No, Now let's wrap that back down. All right. Hooray! And the brights are on now too, so. Now I just have to put the airbox back in, and then we'll take it to the inspection station and see if we pass. I hope we pass. I'll be back soon. We're back. Well, it passed, obviously. There's really not much wrong with this car. And in fact, this is just a prop, because in Massachusetts, they don't print you out the inspection report. They haven't done that for several years. As far as the mass airflow sensor goes, that fix worked. The car is pulling beautifully now. Boy, howdy, does this thing just move. It weighs like 1,500 kilograms, which is a fair amount, but it has 263 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, which makes it a riot. You push the gas and you just gotta hold on. It's a lot of fun. I'm actually wondering whether FAF or this is faster in a straight line. There's no way to know. Anyway, let's get to the important part. What else needs to be done on this car? And what am I gonna do with it? Well, let's answer that in two portions. The first one is the suspension. All of the suspension on this car needs to be thrown into the sun. We are riding on pretty aged components here. There's a lot of clicking and clacking. I'm sure that some of the bushings and the control arms and things like that, they're kind of on the worn out side. Not so much that it would fail in safety inspection, it's just worth noting. I definitely want to replace these tires. They're Nankang AS1s, which are fine, serviceable tires by any stretch of the imagination. I would just like something a little bit better. I'm probably going to get a set of Nokians or maybe a set of Continental DWS. And honestly, that's it. When I bought this car, there were a few flaws. The headlight didn't work, it cut boost, and the suspension and tires were in bad shape. 4 flaws. I fixed the first 2, and I'm going to live with the other 2 until I get at least one of the other 2 BMWs running. Now, the question is, what am I going to do with this car? I don't know how you would know this, but the plates on this car belonged, that's in the past tense, to the X5. The whole point of this was to have this car while I fixed the 2 BMWs, because in 2 weeks, FAF is going to the body shop, and I hope it drives there, and then I need to replace the engine on the X5. Once I'm done with that, and those 2 cars are in working order, and I can use the X5 just like a normal car again, this car goes to my brother. My brother and I both have an affinity for Mazda 3s. In fact, there was a period of time where I owned a 2015 Mazda 3, and I helped him find a 2008. Yeah, it was a 2008 Mazda 3. They were both of the pedestrian variety. I loved my Mazda, and I know that he loved his. And his current car, which actually I bought for him 5 or 6 years ago, is nearing the end of its life. It's a 2001 Volkswagen Golf with a 2-point slow. It was originally silver. Some previous idiot decided to spray paint it black. And the retail price on one of those in fair condition is about 25 cents. And in his car's condition, well, it's a great deal lower than that. I think you'd have to pay someone to take it. What I mean to say is that it's not in great shape. And I think that this car will do a lot better. In the American market, the Speed 3's only potential competitors were the Golf GTI, the Civic Si, Focus ST. I think they did overlap for a couple of years. And that was basically like the same car with a slightly different engine. What else? Like really not much else. There were really not very many spicy sport compacts here in the US at that time. But what there was a reverie for Mazda. But in 2013, the party was over. Mazda created a new generation of 3, which is actually the one that I had. They never made a Mazda Speed version of it. There are many reasons why. At that point, Mazda was independent, no longer owned by Ford. And, well, to put it simply, they didn't have the money for it. They say that it was too immature. But it was a sad thing to realize that the only spiritual successor to this absolute beast of an automobile is that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not this. Anyway, I guess that's enough blogging. So to answer the question that I know you're all anxiously waiting to ask, Is there going to be more Mazda work done on Skelly's Garage? The answer to that question is yes. Because once the BMWs are up and running, I'll need to do some repairs, as I mentioned. And, well, I guess I'll show them to you. Because what else am I going to do? But until then, this car is fine just the way that it is, and I'm very happy for it. Like I said, this has been one of my dream cars since it came out. And I'm super, super happy to finally own one. I'm thrilled that I get a chance to share this experience with you because, well, I mean, I still can't believe that I own this, but maybe if you haven't heard of a Mazda Speed 3, maybe you'll go drive one yourself, and maybe you'll find yourself in love with one. At any rate, I think that's going to wrap this up for this episode. I've got a lot of stuff that's filmed for these two BMWs. It just needs to have logical conclusions before I release things. But so that's coming your way. Definitely follow the Instagram for more updates. It's a lot easier for me to just and post things there than it is for me to plan, shoot, trim, edit, subtitle, design cover art for, and then release an episode. I mean, it's like, that much is obvious. And a huge thanks as always to my Patreon supporters who are right here. These wonderful names support this channel financially, which is really, really cool of them. If you'd like to learn more about it, you can always check out the Patreon as well. Either way, until the next video, my name's Sam, this is Skelly's Garage, and this car doesn't have a name. We'll figure that out. Anyway, see you next time.